Hi, I'm Amanda Jane Woodall and welcome to my fashion school. Born with an instinctive sense of style and grace, this lady was a natural muse, a pixie, a princess, and later in life, an angel. It's the much copied but never replicated one and only Audrey Hepburn. Audrey Kathleen Hepburn Ruston was born on the 4th of May 1929 in Brussels, Belgium, and she actually nearly passed away at just 3 weeks old from whooping cough, but was revived by her mother, who was a Christian Scientist. Her family was well-to-do with aristocratic connections. Her mother was Baroness Ella van Heemstra and her father Joseph Ruston, and both of her parents had lineage that went back to Dutch and British royalty. Sadly, they had a very unhappy marriage because they had opposing views on fascism, and this tore apart the family and left Audrey and her two brothers heartbroken. Her father left the family home when she was just 6, and in 1939 her mum moved the family to Holland, believing that it would be a neutral place to live in the war. However, she got that very, very wrong, and the family faced many hardships living in a German-occupied Holland, and this led to starvation, malnutrition, and enduring freezing temperatures. Her family became part of the underground resistance, and this led to her uncle and her cousin being executed, and also her brothers had to go into hiding until the war was over. And the images of this time, they never ever left Audrey, and it made her never take life for granted because she had witnessed so much suffering. From an early age, she had studied ballet with Dutch and Russian ballerinas, and this meant that she developed a grace and a poise that she would be famed for in her career. And also, it earned her a scholarship to the Rambert Ballet School in London. Her family had been left with basically nothing after the war, and so her mother had to work really hard so that Audrey could fulfill her dreams. But sadly, the malnutrition she had endured during the war meant that she would never ever become a prima ballerina. But she was exceptionally talented, so she still secured an agent and started modelling and doing little television roles. And these photographs that were taken at this time are now considered to be modern art. At the age of 18, she began playing very small film roles, including playing an air hostess in a Dutch educational film, and in 1951 she played a cigarette girl in Laughter in Paradise and a love interest with one line in The Lavender Hill Mob. While making a film in Monte Carlo, she was spotted by author Colette, who thought that Audrey would be perfect for her stage show Gigi. In 1952, she worked as a ballerina on the film The Secret People, and this led to her making connections in the industry that would get her a screen test for the film Roman Holiday. The screen test saw her as the full package. She was a demure pixie, but also very glamorous, and she looked great in every costume and had the personality of a sparkling gem. She made a remarkable impact playing the role of a runaway princess, and her co-star Gregory Peck, he knew the movie was no longer all about him because Audrey was so special. He predicted that she would win an Oscar for her very first performance, and this meant that he asked for Audrey's name to be featured in the titles alongside his own, which was unheard of as he had actually earned his spot for the title role. But in 1954, his prediction was proved exactly right, and Audrey Hepburn won the Academy Award for Best Actress. Paramount moved very quickly to find her a new leading role, and she starred alongside William Holden and Humphrey Bogart, which kind of cemented her status as a star. And knowing that Audrey was a former model, designer Edith Head knew that the costumes for Sabrina needed to be something really special, so she sent her to an up-and-coming designer, Hubert de Givenchy. Because in 1931, Coco Chanel had started featuring her couture clothing in film roles, and this opened up the couture industry into the mainstream of cinema, where usually it had been reserved for elite Europeans. Audrey and Givenchy both shared a meteoric rise to fame in their own respective industries, and this led to classic and elegant designs being made that are still copied by celebrities today. The outfits were very simple, but they were very structural, which suited Audrey's very slender frame. And they were made available as £1 sewing patterns so that housewives could make their own versions at home, and this actually revolutionised the way women dressed. Audrey left a legacy of memorable film roles during the 1950s, including Funny Face in 1957, where she got to dance alongside Fred Astaire. Audrey then started to diversify in her roles, accepting more complex and challenging films, including the heartbreaking love story of War and Peace, and the Nuns Story, where she had to face the hardships of being in Africa. It was a departure from the more romantic and fun roles that she had played in the past, and playing a nun, it brought her back to a memory of her mum telling her to always be useful, needed, and to be caring and loving to other people, and Audrey really took this to heart. In 1961, Audrey would play her most iconic film role as Holly in Breakfast at Tiffany's, and she was able to bring a vulnerability to this flamboyant call girl that people could really get behind and relate to. She loved the fun dialogue and ambience of the film, and she was loved by the camera, and she glowed during her performance, creating some of the most iconic pop culture imagery that has ever existed and is still referenced in media today. The film really captures the fun and innocence of the early 60s. In 1962, executive Jack Warner bought the rights to My Fair Lady for $5 million. And this led to him creating a screen version of the popular stage play. And this had been performed by Julie Andrews and Rex Harrison, and the public really wanted a screen reprisal of their characters, but Jack Warner, he just didn't agree. He wanted the leading roles to go to Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn. However, although Audrey accepted the role, Cary Grant refused, and he said that the only person that should play that role was Rex Harrison, and so he was in. Creative direction of the film went to Cecil Beaton, who is a world-renowned fashion photographer, and he created absolutely massive sets of the squalor and splendour of London and complemented this with the most exquisite and lavish costumes made from silk and fur and jewels. Audrey gave a spirited theatrical performance as Eliza Doolittle, and she worked very hard on her singing voice so that she would be ready for the role. However, post-production, Jack Warner actually replaced Audrey's voice with a classically trained singer, and this led to a mismatch between the characterization of Audrey and this very, very classical voice. This was seen as very unfair to Audrey, as she actually had a beautiful singing voice, and it led to her not being nominated for the Best Actress Oscar that year, even though the production was nominated for 12 Oscars overall. And in a Hollywood sting, the Best Actress Award actually went to Julie Andrews for Mary Poppins, and she made sure to thank Jack Warner for her award. After meeting at a party in 1954, Mel Ferrer and Audrey Hepburn starred in Broadway's show On Dean, and after working together, Audrey and Mel were very much in love, as he filled the kind of fatherly role that Audrey had been missing. In 1954, they married in Switzerland, and Audrey, she longed for a family of her own, but she had really bad luck in this area and suffered many devastating miscarriages, including one time when she was actually thrown off of a horse on set of filming The Unforgiven. After that, she refused any more roles until she had successfully given birth to her son, Sean Hepburn Ferrer, in 1960. Motherhood actually gave Audrey the fulfillment and happiness that she was looking for. She really loved nurturing and domesticity. But although she really wanted to stay at home with her child, she actually felt pressured into returning back to the film industry because her career was more fruitful than her husband. And this issue would actually plague the entire marriage, and eventually this led to their divorce in 1968. Audrey wanted to try again at marriage, so she kind of rashly married esteemed psychiatrist Andrea Dotti in 1959, and they too were blessed with a son named Luca in 1970, and Audrey spent most of her time during that period living an aristocratic Italian lifestyle and raising her two children. However, due to affairs, this marriage also ended. But by 1981, she found a happy and content relationship with Robbie Walters, and the two would be seen as true soulmates who had a warm and lasting relationship. In 1988, she began a new career as a UNICEF ambassador for children. She devoted her time to her humanitarian work, visiting poverty-stricken and war-torn areas in South America, Asia, and Africa. Her early experiences of being a child in a war had made her very compassionate and brave, and she recalled the time post-war that UNICEF had flown in clothing and food for the children, and she just wanted to give back to that charity. She had felt helpless watching the media portrayal of global war and people's suffering, and she just wanted to know how she could use her fame and her fortune to give children a voice that they just didn't have in the media. And so she went to different countries, and she was very hands-on in her care of children. She would actually feed them and provide the medical care that they needed. And these children, they didn't know Audrey was a movie star. They just knew that she was a very kind, loving and compassionate lady. After a final, very harrowing trip to Somalia in 1992, Audrey had severe stomach pains and was sadly diagnosed with cancer of the colon, which unfortunately did not respond to treatment. Her last wish was to be able to fly home to Switzerland to spend Christmas with her family, but doctors were reluctant to let her fly commercially because she was very fragile and in ill health. But luckily, old friend and collaborator Hubert de Givenchy stepped in and got her a private jet filled with flowers to take her home to rest. She passed away serenely in her sleep on the 20th of January 1993. Following her passing, admiration for the star continued to rise, and media still referenced the classic Audrey Hepburn style. Audrey was polished. She walked, talked and dressed beautifully. She was a natural actress and a person of great depth, humour and compassion. Her early suffering gave her astonishing beauty inside and out, and although she was part of Hollywood glamour, what really fulfilled her was caring for children. And this gives us hope that love truly is a force to be reckoned with. So we have come to the end of this video, but I will see you again in my follow-up video when we're going to get back to doing some sewing. Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. She devoted her time to human